Hello, welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host J.R. Stewart.
And good evening, everyone. I am your co host, Tommy Duncan. Welcome to Black Men Speak.
Welcome to another episode of Black Men Speak, the most progressive talk show dealing with black issues on the internet and in social media. So
Absolutely.
let's give a shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. And if you haven't already, please hit the like button to improve our numbers with the algorithm for YouTube. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. And please share and spread the word. Invite a friend if you like the show. Come back and invite a friend next time you come. So, Tom, what's the topic for tonight?
You know what, Jimmy? Very intriguing topic. Something that I was reading through last week and kind of shared with you. We had an interesting conversation. And, it was a story, interesting story, unfortunate story
Hmm.
about a 10-year-old young girl who was at school doing what young people do and was targeted, handcuffed, and taken to jail, 10 years old, at a grammar school as a result of a picture that she drew in school and related to a young girl who was in, I believe, her same class, but maybe not the same class, but the same
No,
school
in the
and been
same
bullied.
class. Same class.
Yep, same class. And, Jimmy, I just started, feeling some kind of way about this. And it took me back to a lot of other incidents that I've seen over the years where our young black girls and even women for that matter are targeted and handled in a certain way. In this case, it was in law enforcement, Jimmy, but you and I have had multiple conversations about how black women aren't protected. They don't have, I believe Malcolm X said a long time ago during his too short life that black women are the least respected women in society today. And this still kind of goes on. And so I thought it would be appropriate for us to have a conversation about why is why it is important to protect black women and our responsibility and how it is paramount to empowering the black community. That's kind
Okay.
of the focus. But it really started with this article that I read last week that I found sad, unfortunate, and all too common as it pertains to our young black girls and black women for that matter and how they are treated by society.
Yes. Well, the treatment of black girls by law enforcement in these situations, Tom. I mean, there have been several stories that chronicle how the use of force is much heavier, a heavy-handed approach when it comes to black girls versus maybe a young white girl or some other ethnic group. But let's just say this, Tom, before we jump into the conversation, in no way we're trying to say that the young lady here who drew the picture, was justified in what she did. I mean, I know she was being bullied by this girl, but I believe the picture she drew was a picture of some kind of bodily harm or threat to the young lady. So that is a criminal offense, which is why the police were called. But the way they treated her was not necessary for a 10-year-old girl. You don't have to handcuff a 10-year-old to put them in control. You can easily walk her out to the squad car or keep her in the principal office and call the parents, which is probably what should have been done. This should have been handled by the school in the principal's office, and maybe bring in some counseling. But the root cause of this is to do something about the bullying. She wouldn't even have to drew the picture if she wasn't being bullied. So she has a right to go to school and get an education without being bullied. And obviously the school did not do enough to protect her. And so in order mentally, you have to do something to kind of protect yourself. And drawing this picture maybe was the only mental protection she could provide for herself. So I'm not
And
going to
even if she
blame her
doesn't,
too much.
and also there were some other young people that were involved
Yes,
in
and
this.
coloring the picture. They other
Absolutely,
classmates
and
were. She drew it, but
exactly.
they colored in all of the colors and stuff. So she had some accomplices with this. But Tom,
But
this
there
is
was
not.
no mention of them being handcuffed and taken.
Yeah, that's excessive. That is too much for a 10-year-old. Any 10-year-old for that matter, especially a young girl. And like I said, that is something that could have been handled in the principal's office or the counselor's office, and call both parents in to address the issue. One, to make sure that the bullying stopped, and two, to counsel the young lady and to say, you know, communicating the threat is not the way to deal with this. Go find someone in a position of authority, and she may have done that, and still nothing happened to protect her. So, and if that's the case, then she is mentally protecting her own self in the only way that she can, because she probably, if she could beat the other girl up, she probably would have already. I don't know the sizes of these young ladies or what's going on, but yeah, the way they dealt with this.
But this is my question, though,
Mhm.
and we'll kind of unpack this and peel the layer back on this onion a little bit as we get into the conversation. And we were all in school. We were all young, and young folks are gonna get into disputes. Sometimes they're gonna get into fights.
Right.
I don't think anybody is lost that young people trying to grow up, trying to whether they're trying to determine whether they're tougher than the other person, can protect themselves, and typically ends up with a meeting in the office with
Right.
those young people, or possibly if it gets extremely taxing, then obviously you bring the parents in, Jimmy. But my understanding is that one parent, the parent of the kid who was bullying the other young lady, called staff and demanded that they
Yes.
call the police.
Yes.
And
Once
so
seeing the
it
picture, felt that the picture depicted a threat to her child, so she had every right. So we're not going to say that she didn't have the right to request the charges to be filed if someone is threatening her child. But like I said, this could have been handled in the office because her child is the one who started this, put this in motion by bullying
exactly.
the young girl.
And where's the threat to the young lady who was being bullied? And
Correct.
why was the young girl who was bullying the other young lady
Well,
not
the
handled?
mother should have filed a counter charge, asked for a charge to be filed against the other girl also for bullying her daughter, especially if she put hands on her daughter. So, I hope that if this was going on, I hope the young lady communicated to those in a position of authority what was going on. And Tom, if they did nothing, then they're more responsible and culpable for this than anybody else.
But if we kind of expand on this conversation, and I don't believe that there is a lack of incidents where it seems like
Oh
young
no, it's a
black
pattern, Tom.
or,
This happens all
or,
over, not just in one
black
case.
women
Hmm.
are manhandled. Let's be very clear, manhandled in a
Correct.
certain way. It's been some years ago, Jimmy, but I remember in McKinney, Texas, the area where you live, where there was a pool party.
Correct. Yep.
And I think that the noise got kind of loud. Law enforcement was called out, and then you see a video of a young girl that was literally body slammed into the ground by a law enforcement officer. There was a situation not too long ago. Was a 16-year-old girl in Florida was body slammed by a police officer, who after that suffered memory loss and or brain. Jimmy, we
Well,
can
the
sit
the
here.
excessive treatment is wrong, Tom. But in the case of the McKinney case, I will disagree with you on that one. So my view
Okay,
on that one.
where do we disagree with
Well,
its
we have to teach our kids, Tom, to respect law enforcement, and then on top of that, we have to expect and demand that law enforcement respect us in return. That young lady in McKinney that you're talking about, there's a bunch of kids who are running around, two officers who are trying to get control of the situation. One young boy pushed another young boy into the back of the officer. He doesn't know if he's been attacked or what, so he grabbed his gun and turned around, but that could have been a fatal incident. This young lady that you're talking about, he told her twice to leave the situation. Leave the area, just go home. She left, came back. He told her again, she left and came back. At that point, you've got to get control of the situation. You can't just let all these kids just keep running around uncontrolled. I'm sorry that it happened to her, that young lady.
Jimmy,
Um,
this is the point. I'm not saying that
but we
if
can't
a law
excuse bad behavior, is what
enforcement,
I'm saying, Tom, and
I'm not
justify
saying
it.
if a law enforcement officer tells you to do something that you shouldn't comply, but help me understand.
Hmm.
Show me the instances where you have little young white girls being body slammed literally into the ground. Show me the little Asian girls who, and you can't tell me, Jimmy, that black girls are the only ones who may say or do something that might be offensive to the
No,
police
Tom, they're
officer.
not. But understand this, that the attitude towards black people collectively in general is not good. Uh,
Oh, we know
uh,
that.
so as long as we continue to be subhuman to some people, to be criminals in the eyes of the criminal justice system, which we just did a show about. The Lady Justice not look upon us with blind equal weight in the application of the law. So a lot of times we are treated in a much more heavy-handed fashion because to society at whole, we're still the subhuman group in America, Tom. We're still the ones on our knees begging white people for freedom. We're still the ones who can't seem to get our act together, can't come together to fix our problems. So when other people look at us, Tom, they don't look at us as their equals. They look at us as being pathetic, sad people who are more violent prone and criminal prone than anything else that they have to have a heavy hand with because you don't know what these animals are going to do to you in return. And that's unfortunate, Tom, and we have to do something about that. And part of my belief is we have to stop with this racism. We put way too much into that now. Now is the time for us to come together and start educating our kids, teaching them to respect the law, not break the law. I mean, we're not going to do anything to give people a reason for law enforcement to come deal with us. But if they do, we're going to be the most respectful people that you ever could imagine when law enforcement come. We're going to follow their dictate. If it's wrong, they tell us to do something wrong, we'll deal with it afterwards and file complaints. But I don't want you harmed or even worse, killed by law enforcement over non-compliance. So, if the officer say go home, leave the area and go home, go home. Don't leave and come back.
I'm not disagreeing with you in principle, but let me be very clear. In the history of this country, if it were true that if our community were just compliant, then we wouldn't have the issues that we have in terms of
Not just
police
compliance,
violence.
Tom. You missed the bigger picture.
Wait. Let me finish.
Go ahead.
If it were just a matter of us being respectful or potentially being compliant, I don't think we would be having much of a conversation here.
That's
But
correct.
if we look at it historically, it doesn't matter how compliant black folks try to do. It doesn't matter how respectful they try to be when the opportunity calls for it. The reality of it is, it's not justice that, or even racism that we're dealing with. It's an element of having control and or power. One over your destiny, two over your community, three over your families, and three over all factors of your community, which is what Malcolm ultimately says. Because at the end of the day, we can be as compliant as we want to be as a culture of people. We can be as respectful to law enforcement agencies, which on the most part we have. Obviously, mass media is going to always find something to put out there because obviously they're there to sell for the eyes that buy, that basically for the businesses that are driving their revenue. But at the end of the day, Jimmy, it doesn't matter how respectful our community has been because we have been overall. It doesn't matter how compliant we have been over the years because on the most part we have, except when we are pushed too hard and we feel that we have no other choice but to push back. And we're not talking about isolated incidents, but we're talking about overall as a community of people. And so getting back to the point of our young black women, our girls and our women in particular, and how they are handled, number one, by the mainstream community, how they are handled by law enforcement, quite frankly, even how they are handled within our community. That is a conversation that we have to have, and that is something that we have to correct because without our women being protected, without our women being respected, Jimmy, we are at best dubious, and we are and have been in trouble since our bodies did not belong to us. They
Well,
belong
Tom,
to
we have been in trouble for a very long time, and we continue to be in trouble, and we will be unless our attitudes change. So we can expect other people to respect our young girls and our women if we don't. When the last time you saw any kind of music video that depicted the black woman in a positive way? I mean, you have to go back to 30, 40 years ago. Maybe find an old Luther video or something, or Lionel Richie. The black woman in videos today is she's not depicted very well, and it's the same thing on with other forms of media. You know, uh, um, Angela Bassett turns down roles that depict black women in a bad way. But there are plenty of other actresses that will take that role and get on the big screen and degrade a black woman, the image of the black woman, for money. And this is where we are, Tom. We lack the scruples. And when other people look at us collectively, here's what they see: black man in jail, not protecting his children, not taking care of his children, certainly not can protect them if he's in jail. The black woman in jail, some of them, and the rest are being disrespected. The few good black women out there can't find a man to partner up with, to marry and settle down and have families. And then all the problems of the black community, Tom, are for the most part laid on the feet of white people to fix and resolve. And for white people to look at this, if it was reversed, if people were constantly coming at you, blaming you for their problems, constantly saying, give me money, fix my problems, do this, do that, and it's your fault, at some point you're going to get sick of it also. And there's no way you can view that person as being your equal. Time is impossible psychologically to do so. The person living under the bridge don't know where they're going to get food from day to day. You don't look up to that person, maybe spiritually say, this is my brother, but in reality, that person's not your equal in stature in life, because they're much worse off than you are. And this is how white people view us collectively, that we are worse off than they are, that we're not their equals. So for us to keep begging and whining and asking them to treat us as their equals, until we start stepping our game up, Tom, they have no reason whatsoever, other than pity out of the kindness of their heart, to even attempt to treat us like decent people. Otherwise,
Well,
otherwise they just see us mistreating ourselves, mistreating our women, not taking care of our own business, not doing the things that we need to do to uplift ourselves, and then, complaining about it. So we have to have a record of accomplishment, time of doing some things. That's going to be the best way long term to protect our women and our young girls.
well, where I definitely would agree with you, Jimmy, is that we cannot expect any other group of people to ultimately take control
Or the
of our
system, or the
destiny.
government.
We cannot expect any benefactor, I will
Right.
call it. We cannot expect any kind, so-called kind, benevolent benefactor to fix all of our issues, which, by the way, they created.
Yes, I agree.
We cannot
Especially
expect.
that white liberal, but
I would agree with you that we cannot expect a system, a government, or a culture of people who created our problems in order to build their economy to also somehow revert and or solve the problems that they created for us. And so, we get to this proverbial conversation, if you have, one group of people that have built their economy, they have built their economy, they have expropriated your wealth, they have expropriated your labor, they have expropriated the value that you bring to the table and claimed it as their own. And now they're on the 50-yard line. We're talking about football terms here, and you're at scratch. And every time you take a couple of steps forwards, Greenwood, then they blow you back, so to speak. Every time you make the effort, doing it what they consider to be the right way, they make sure that they disparage you, that they destroy everything that you create on your own, by the way, without very much of any of their help. Then the question becomes, what is it in terms of change of behavior? Do we really have to have a conversation about now in order to say, you know what, in spite of the attack that we know is going to come after our community, every time we build something, even in spite of the circumstances, what decisions do we have to make now? I get it. We don't expect the system that destroyed our culture, destroyed our community, eliminated all vestiges of our religion, our language, to all of a sudden restore that. Reparations, everything. I would agree with you. I don't expect that. But we ultimately have to make some very clear and uncomfortable decisions if we are going to take control of our destiny, if we're going to protect our women, if we're going to protect our children, if we're going to protect our families, if we're going to build a community that will be competitive, that will be a threat to those who would attack us, Jimmy. but it's going to require some very uncomfortable decisions because it's going to require us being inconvenienced for a very long period of time. It's going to require us to make some decisions that may not see the light of day while we're still living.
Well, Tom, that is true. And so let me clarify because I hate throwing blanket statements over all people. So in principle, what you're saying is true. But we're not talking about all white people. We're talking about white liberals for the most part.
We're not.
And so there are groups of white people who, for whatever reason, they're in insipid need to be superior to someone. This has always existed. You don't see this very much. I mean, you do see it in some other cultures and other countries that have that kind of attitude also. But for the most part, we have it here with a group of white people. They have historically have wanted to have a caste type system like the Europeans have, where you have a ruling class or a royal class, even sirs and madams. Then you have serfs. Everyone else is up under them, and this is what they have wanted to build in America. This is what they continue to work towards. So it's not necessarily about the economy anymore these days. It's more about having a subservient class that we can feel. I don't care how pathetic you are as a white person, you can still feel good in life because you know deep down that overall you're in a better place than black people are. And so this gives comfort to some of these people. And so for us, Tom, we have to continue despite what we've done and had destroyed and had taken from us. We have to continue to come together and continue to work towards that goal of doing for ourselves. Because if you don't make your bed up when you get out of it, when you come home, that bed's still going to be messed up. And someone else is not going to come in and sneak into your house and make your bed up. So when you return home, you can feel good about going to bed. So we have to make up our own bed, Tom. We have to fix this ourselves, and we're not doing enough of that. And we keep turning back the clock, looking backwards, and which is why we can't move forward, saying, "Well, we did this and we did that, and they took it away from us. They took and they did." Okay, that was the past. This is still now. We have to deal with today. We have to educate our kids. We have to take over those school systems that are not educating our kids properly, and we know this, Tom, and we just don't do it. We know we have to take over the economics of our neighborhoods. We don't do it. It's not money. We can build multi-million-dollar churches in these same areas. So if we can do that, we can build a few businesses to feed our people and provide goods and services to the community. I know we can come together and do this, Tom. We just don't do it. And that's on us. And all the things that we don't do from looking backwards is what's keeping us from looking forward and moving forward. This is why I'm saying I'm done with the racism thing, man. I'm done with
Well,
it.
Jim, this is I understand where you're coming from, and I understand why. But this is the thing we have to consider. Unless you have learned the lesson that you need to learn, you're going to repeat the same
How many,
mistake.
Tom?
And in addition to that,
How
Jimmy, let's
much
think
more do they
about
have to do to us for us to learn, Tom?
well, no, no, I get your point.
They have
But,
stepped on
but the
us.
reason that we cannot forget history
No, you can't
is
forget
because
it. You need to
if we
remember
do
it to
forget
motivate you to go forward.
if I agree with you. But the reality of it is you have to learn from history. You have to learn from what happened in order to move forward. I mean, let's think about this. As small as the Jewish community is globally, they have a significant amount of power. Why? Because they are inspired by what has happened to ensure that it never happens again. The difference is they have made a very clear investment as to what's not going to happen again. Now, where I do completely agree with you is that we cannot continue to complain about it. We have to do something about it. And there are folks out there who are doing that. But as a community, as a culture of people, our part of our culture, part of our ethos has to be what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. What does that mean? And so as we don't get too far off task to the topic of our conversation today, the question is going back to our women,
Right.
how we protect them, how we respect them, how do we treat them,
Our wives and our mothers, yes.
what's at stake, and what has to change. And this actually has to be a conversation first with Black men, but then
Yes, it does,
also it
Tom.
has to be a conversation within our community of Black women as well. So let's start with the brothers as men, the conversation that we have to
We
have
have to
among
step
our.
up, Tom. We have to
It,
we have to
what does that mean?
That
Let's be
means
very.
that we have to be willing to be responsible, provide leadership and security for our black women and for our children, our families. Um, the black woman is not going to respect the black man when he's not doing anything, and he certainly can't expect her to follow his lead and direction when he's being irresponsible and making bad decisions. I'm gonna give you an example here recently, Tom. The situation where the like a transgender case. A boy puts a dress on, goes into the girl's bathroom, rapes a girl, assaults a girl and rapes her. And the father, a couple of fathers from this school were so outraged that they are now, planning their run for the school board so they can fire the superintendent who failed to protect their child and failed to provide protection for all the girls at that school. Those are men who are stepping up, who are not just complaining about it. So if we continue time to look backwards, drive our cars in reverse, we're never ever going to get to the finish line at the same rate that other people who are driving forward and looking forward. So the Jews, they look forward, they drive forward. Tom, we can't drive forward because we're looking back, always looking back to the past. So this is why we can't go to move to the. I'm not saying we forget about it, we ignore it. We learn from what has happened. We have determination that it's not going to happen again, and we use that as a motivation to say we're going to make people respect us as a people, respect our women, respect our young girls, because we're not going to tolerate that. And when we start generating more wealth and becoming a little more of a group that other people look at and say, yeah, those people are heading in the right direction. They're doing the right things. But people don't look at us that way, Tom. So I'm saying we are spinning our wheels, complaining about the symptoms of the problem when we have the answer. And a big part of that answer, Tom, is for us as black men to step up and start doing the right. First of all, earn the respect of the black woman. Then on top of that, do the thing necessary
Okay,
to protect her and the children.
wait a minute, back up. Earn
hmm
the respect of the black woman. Let's bulletize that. What does that look like, and what does that mean?
That
In
means
your opinion,
that means being responsible, taking care of your children, maintaining a household, putting a roof, providing for your family and your children, and making sure they're safe. Don't leave them to the system to take care of your children. Don't bring children into the world that you can't afford to take care of. That's just being irresponsible. Then on top of that, Tom, black men run very little in this country. We don't even control our own neighborhoods. We used to. We don't do that anymore. We used to be heavy in the construction industry. We were the most employed group of in America coming into the 20th century until the unions conspired against us with the white liberals to take jobs away from the black man. The black family was destroyed. But black men walked out of those homes and let Uncle Sam take his place. We should have never let that happen, Tom. We have things that we need to go back and fix and correct in our thinking. We need to regain our leadership position in the community so we can regain the respect of the black woman so she knows that she can count on us. That she can be a ride or die for us because we're always going to look out for her best interest and those children's best interest. But until we do that, other people are going. When we do that, Tom, other people look at us and have a much more greater respect for us as a people. They look at us now and they don't have that because we're not doing the things that show that we even respect and love ourselves.
Jimmy, there you definitely pull out a couple of good points. But I mean, again, and one of the things that you mentioned earlier, you talk about
hmm
system, not having trust in the system,
None.
but then also to a certain degree, the system has a significant impact on your day to day in terms of what you mentioned, jobs, in terms of what you mentioned, opportunities. And so the question then becomes, I would agree. When you look at the 20th century, black men were highly employed in construction, blue collar
Yes.
jobs. When we look at post civil rights, post voting rights, et cetera, you look at black men getting more opportunities at white collar jobs and making higher incomes. And we're talking about those who are not entrepreneurs and things of that nature. But what also I would have to add as a layer to that, Jimmy, is that we have to have as men the courage to lead on the economic front.
We do,
What does
Tom.
that
I agree.
at the end of the day, Jimmy, we give all of our economic resources, we give our emotional resources and our labor to a group of people who does not directly or indirectly in any way show any respect for us. And so, with that being said, Jimmy, there are, I mean, if we look at some churches in this country, if we look at, for instance, historically in the 60s, the Nation of Islam, if we look at the heyday of the NAACP, even though they were pretty much funded and steered by non black folks, being able to create strategies, being able to create a narrative where we are self sufficient and independent. We have not been there since before integration, Jimmy.
That's
And
true.
so, with that being said, black men, in my opinion, everybody has to take care of their families, which means they need a job because they need income. We have to learn to pull back our resources economically and otherwise from institutions that are not supporting us and build our own. And it's not going to be an easy job, Jimmy. But the question is, if we look at the next 100 years and our children's children, what alternative do we have other than them being in the same situation that we are right now? What does that look like? Not having control over the institutions or the factors that generate employment for our people, that put us in a position where we can protect our women, our children, and our young girls, be it law enforcement and or other institutions, and or even politically, Jimmy. We're basically where we sell our vote to a party, whether it be Republican or Democrat, and then we don't hold them accountable.
Well, Tom, we don't sell it to the Republicans. I wish we did in more equal
Well, Jimmy,
fashion.
at the end of the day, at one point in time in history, we did.
We did,
I,
yes, until 1936 was when it's
but
when.
at the end of the day, Jimmy, whether we are selling our votes to the Republican Party prior to the middle of the 20th century or the Democratic Party after it, to your point, we're still waiting on them to do right. We're waiting for justice. We're always complaining about justice as opposed to focusing on how we create power. And
Okay, but
that's the
Tom, so
conversation that
let
we
me
have.
tackle some of this. So I mean, there was a lot of bullet items in there, so I'll go with the last first. So politically, 1936 with the election of Roosevelt over Hoover. I mean, Hoover did black people wrong publicly, although behind the scenes he was trying to make amends. But he really disrespected black people collectively in order to go after the white Southern vote. So the party paid the price for that. Black people went from 65% Republican to 65% Democrat in one election. Okay, and they never looked back. But the difference here, Tom, is that we were willing to punish Republicans for their mistake. We have never punished Democrats for their mistake. The previous president, whether you liked him or not, did fix the funding issue for HBCUs and to make sure they had regular funding yearly increases, but they didn't have to come back every year begging for money. And they were just where they can plan long term on money coming into the university provided by the government. The current president and his party has plan to strip $30 billion away from black universities when you're increasing spending by $5 trillion. There's no reason to take money away from the black schools when you're now adding $5 trillion in new spending for everyone else except you take money away from. So once again, Tom, how the political party, the Democrats, ever going to have respect for black people? Because you know what? The NAACP, the Urban League, 100 Successful Black Men, no black groups, the fraternities, sororities, nobody other than us mentioning on this show have seen them even make even kind of complain about it, to make any kind of noise about it. So they look at that and then say, "Oh, you let us just step over you, piss on you, and shit on you. Then we have no respect for you because you don't respect yourself." And economically, Tom, once again, they're not stopping us from coming together, doing what we have to do. They just have us so focused on racism. And when white people join in your chant about racism, yeah, white people are your problem. These are the people that want you to stay focused on racism. Why? Because they understand you're not, as long as you're looking back at racism, you're not moving forward. And they want you stuck in neutral. They want you stuck in reverse because this is how they feel good about themselves, not about the accomplishment that you're making, because they know you're not accomplishing anything stuck on racism. This is why they feed you racism. This is why they have the black influencers, the Melvin Smiths, the fathead Roland Martin, and Joy Reid, and Don Lemon, and all the rest of them. Have you so focused on racism rather than focusing on the one thing, Tom, that you and I know that matters in this country, which is wealth. And if we focus our attention on wealth like other groups, I promise you, we will outperform every group in America. Why? Because we are the most innovative, we're the smartest, and most creative people God ever made to put on this damn planet. And we are wasting away in this country focusing on racism and having our God given talents wasted. I mean, we talk about making $1 out of 15 cents, and Tom, that's over a 700% return on your investment if you can do that. But this is our mindset of what we think we have to do. Well, if you could just get a 200% return on investment, you would be a Wall Street wizard. 100% return. If you take 15 cents and turn it into 30 cents, you would be a billionaire on Wall Street. And I'm saying that we have the talent to do this, Tom, but and we've seen periods of this where we've come together and demonstrated that we have this ability. And I understand that the white liberals and the black minions came along and destroyed it, took it away from us. But that's when they really had the power to do so. Now they have a lot less power to overtly do it, so it's more subjective now. They control us and they control the movements of black people by keeping you emotionally focused on racism. You can't think logically while you're so emotionally thinking all the time. We have to get past the time and we have to have a renaissance and change our thinking. I wish we split our vote between both parties, make them work for our vote, demand that they go out and do something about the schools. If we're not going to run for office and change the politics of the school system, get involved in creating businesses and jobs in our communities, and we're not going to do the things necessary, then at the very least, we're going to outsource this to other people, then make them earn your vote. Let the political parties fight for your support. We still give 95% of our support to one party, and that party has shit all over us for the last 80, 90 years and not look back. And they still continue to do it. If people think that this is just the past, I mean, this is recent history. The USDA still don't pay farmers, black farmers, what they pay white farmers. And we've talked about this. The criminal justice system, which is a big pillar of the system, doesn't treat black people fairly. We know this. In electing the black president who did nothing about the sentencing guidelines, which we know are unfair. And the same guy who wrote those sentencing guidelines and been the chief architect of the sentencing guidelines since he entered Congress, Jim Crow Joe Biden, is a person that we turned around and gave our support to. Do you realize how laughable this has to be to white folks who look at this and say, y'all been complaining about these sentencing guidelines all this time and how fair they are, but the guy who's been the architect of all the sentencing guidelines for the last 40 years, including the one that Clinton just signed that caused all the trouble, y'all turn around and vote for him and put him in office.
Well, Jimmy, I can't disagree with everything that you said, but looking at the optics of why a group of people, would vote for Joe Biden, it's clearly because of what they saw from the prior 4 years, Jimmy. And that's not to say that there were some things that the prior president did that may not have benefited black people, but if you look at a lot of the optics in terms of the community that he supported, that was offensive to a lot of folks within the black community.
Like
and as
what,
a
Tom?
result,
What didn't he do? The major issues. One of the major issues was sentencing guidelines. It took the white Republican president to do something that the black president didn't dare do, which is reform those sentencing guidelines that black people have been complaining about. And when he did it, Tom, where was anybody to step up and say, hey, thank you for listening to our concerns. We appreciate you using your political capital to get this taken care of to show that you're listening to us. No, Tom, we turned around and criticized. We criticized the effort for someone doing something about our concerns and celebrate the black president who did nothing about our concerns. The
well, there's a couple
HBCU
things you have to
funding, the
consider,
enterprise
Jimmy. I mean,
zones, 70
there are other things you have to consider, Jimmy. Number one,
what? What do I have to consider,
considering
Tom?
after the first couple of years when Obama was in office, and of course he bulldogged the ACA Act in there, and then of course he lost Congress. There wasn't anything that the Congress was going to let him do from that point forward either way. Now, when it comes to President Trump and his time in office,
Sentencing
yeah,
guidelines came with the Democrat Congress.
but
Those guideline reforms came. Sentencing justice reform came with a Democrat Congress. So that's not true that he's not able to
no,
work. But my
no,
point
no,
is,
no.
Tom, is that we hadn't given him credit for the things he did do to address our
Maybe
issues.
well, the problem with
and I don't want to get into a back and
So, yeah,
forth over
is
this.
that
My point is, Tom, is
if
that
he kept his mouth closed
I
long enough,
understand.
I think
He
so
very
much that
yes,
was
I
so
agree. His
offensive
mouth
to
does get
so
him in
many
trouble.
people, Jimmy. Any of the good things that he could have done was drowned out because he just couldn't keep his
I
mouth shut for
understand,
long
Tom.
enough and saying something completely stupid that offended practically
But we're
everybody,
talking about
including
how
white
we're
folks.
perceived, and what I'm saying is that other people look at this. They look and see us complain about those sentencing guidelines for many, many years, Tom. Every year, though, it is not fair
But
that
Jimmy,
that you sell
Jimmy,
crack and get 5 years
I'm
in
not,
federal prison. You sell
I'm not
crystal meth and
debating.
go to
I'm
30
not
days in the
debating
county
what he
jail.
may have done quietly, but the reality of it is he's said so many stuff that
Tom,
offended.
I
So
understand. I agree with all that. But what I'm trying to
it's
get
not
you to
Jimmy,
see,
you can't. But what I'm saying is the reason why folks can't even get to the point of understanding and acknowledging what he did is because he couldn't keep his mouth shut
Tom,
long enough
it
for,
does
for
not
things
matter,
to be
Tom.
understand what he may
Actions
have
need to
actually.
speak louder than
It,
words.
it, it, well, Jimmy,
So we
it
we rather
obviously is a
take.
very quiet secret.
Let me make sure I understand this. We rather have the window dressing of words over action, and we're going to let words be more important. And then we expect people to respect us, to value us, when they look at this from the outside and say, "You've been complaining about this. One party's giving you lip service about it, did nothing, and you vote for them, you love them, you give them your money. The guy who actually did something about it, that's the one that you criticize and ridicule."
The
So,
question
Tom,
is,
you can't.
but then the question becomes, okay, he's done something, but if we look at enforcement and we look at
Hmm.
the material difference in terms of the sentencing results as it pertains to black people,
Hmm.
that's what folks are looking at. But why don't we do this? Because we got 15 minutes left in the show, and we do want to make sure that we bring some closure to our topic, which is protecting black women.
And the point is, Tom, is that until we have a renaissance change, I mean, I ain't talking about just some tweaks around the edges, Tom. We're talking about wholesale change in the way we think and approach life. Until that happens, Tom, we have very little, because we can't be everywhere to protect women, physically protect them. So, and if we're not there to raise our children,
So ultimately, Jimmy, we're talking structural differences. We're talking institutional changes and structural differences.
I'm saying throw out the black influencers of today who constantly preach racism to you. It's time for us to put an end to the racism game. We need to just go ahead and say we won the battle or it was a
Well,
draw.
but if you're moving away from something, the question is, one, where are you moving to,
We're moving
and
to a wealth-based way of
moving
thinking,
to,
Tom.
and really, how are you getting that message out to the masses? Because that is what matters when you don't control mass media. That's the challenge.
That
And
that
when folks who, you are right, benefit from those who are race baiters, for those who want to keep you focused on the mantra of racism, and when they are the chosen ones
yes,
from
purposely.
those who want to keep that narrative, but those are the folks who the masses are following. Those are the folks who the masses are listening to. The question is, what are the structural changes? What are the systematic changes that you are making? Understanding that everybody isn't going to agree on everything in order to affect change within our community, to put us in a position of power. Because ultimately, Jimmy, if it's not coming from the church within our community, if it's not
It's
coming
not gonna come
from
from the church,
if it's not coming from a highbrow politician
right?
that most people will listen to, if it's not driven by mass media that you don't already control, well, then you're going to obviously have to drive it through a alternative medium that is
Tom,
going to be effective
it's
in
called
getting the
it's called Black Men
message.
Speak. So that this is the alternative media that you're talking about, and we never know, Tom, who's listening to our show, how we are
True.
planting seeds in their thinking, and the next that Renaissance wave that we're talking about, and that change of the collective thinking, is the seeds are being planted right now. We don't realize it, but we are influencing people. People are listening to what we have to say. This is going into their thinking, and they may not change overnight. But I guarantee you, we are affecting change on a small scale now, and it'll be a much larger scale in time as things grow. We just have to stay true to ourselves because we can't be bought. They've already tried to inconvenience us, intimidate us away from our message. They hadn't been able to change that, and they won't be able to change it. And whereas if YouTube went away tomorrow, we still have our own streaming platform that we can turn to if we had to. So we're not dependent. We're demonstrating that we're not going to be dependent on white people for everything. That we're going to do some things ourselves. I mean, we will gladly work with YouTube, but if YouTube shut us down tomorrow, Black Men Speak will still be streamed from our website tomorrow. We will continue to go forward. So this is the attitude that we have on this show, and that attitude will start planting seeds and will nurture and grow and blossom in the future. We just have to stay consistent, Tom, and believe in our message and what we're doing. Black Man Speak is that alternative media that you're talking about.
Amen. Let me put a couple of bullets out there
Okay.
and have maybe about 12 minutes to close out. This is my thing.
Okay.
If we're going to do this, if we're going to build respect that you mentioned earlier with our women, with our children, with our descendants, with the next generation, we as Black men, part of that stepping up is we've got to build our own economy.
Yes.
Some of us, like yourself, are entrepreneurs. Some of us, like myself, are in corporate America, but that doesn't prevent all of us from building our own economy.
That's
That
correct.
doesn't prevent any of us from supporting economically and politically our own institutions, whether that's the small store shop owner in your neighborhood, whether that's encouraging someone who has a talent or a skill to build their own business and become their own small economy, building into a big economy. Jimmy, I know we've talked about this over and over again. Prior to integration, we fully had integrated economic change within our community that was lost after integration. But building our own economy, that's number one, because obviously that puts us in a position to feed our own people, put food on our own table, being able to take care of our household. That's number one. Number two, self-defense. At the end of the day, we can talk about justice all we want to, but at the end of the day, if somebody comes to your house,
You've totally
Jimmy,
ignored the chat line, Tom.
okay, there we go. Okay, we're gonna have to address that, Jimmy. So I'm gonna keep this self-defense.
Hmm.
Nobody has respect for anyone who cannot protect themselves, and so at the end of the day,
Right, and we
we're gonna
can't
have to
protect
invest.
ourselves.
Exactly, self-defense. That's number two. Number three, we're going to have to ultimately step up as men, regardless of what the situation is. If you are married, you have a wife and children, take care of your business. For
Yes.
those who are out there who brought children into this world and they are not in the lives of their children, even if for whatever reason they are still not married to the mother of their children, you have got to man up, take care of your children, even if the mother of your children is a difficult scenario. I have a lot of
You're
friends
being
who've been in this
kind.
situation before. I'm being as kind as I can. Even if the mother of your children has made it difficult for you, you have to continue to stay the course and do the best that you can to stay in the lives of your children while you can, because eventually they're going to be adults and there is still time. But Jimmy, when you lose out on the entire life of your children, you are doing yourself and our community as a
Yes.
disservice. And there is a significant difference, as we have seen, in both our young men and our young women who do not have a strong father
That is true,
figure
Tom.
in their lives. And so
I know
we've
that
got to man up,
firsthand. Yes.
build your economy, invest in self-defense. You have to be able to protect your own household, your own community, not depend on anybody else, because quite frankly, we have seen that law enforcement may not be protecting and serving our households, but others. And then
Well, they protect
obviously,
mine, Tom.
well, I'm glad they protect yours, but in the hood,
I understand what you're saying.
in the hood, it may be a different situation. Holding them accountable, and then
Yes.
obviously protecting and covering the women in your life and the children
That is
that you bring
correct.
into this world, Jimmy. If we can get those three things right, Jimmy, I believe that we make a difference. We have about 10 minutes. What say you? I believe we do have some
On the
comments that
chat
were in the
line,
chat
one
line.
of the
Yes.
comments was
Oh my goodness.
about the
You've
angry women, and we never said anything about black women being angry.
No, I don't believe we said that.
No, we did not. So we spoke about protecting black women. Now, they do
Correct.
have a right to be angry. over the lack of responsibility and leadership that the black man has provided here recently, and for walking out on the black family during the 60s. So they have every right to be angry, but we didn't mention that tonight on this show, so I'm not sure where that comment came from. And let me see if I can lean back and look at some of these other ones. I have it on a different screen here.
There are a couple of interesting comments in here. It's the church that made us weak and submissive. Interesting comment. We've definitely had that conversation before.
Yes, we have.
This is a good show. Thank you very much. Why can't we have more black men like you guys? Well, you know what? We are here. We're not going anyplace, and we're focused on the next generation of young men. And by the way, Jimmy, one of the things that we do need to do for especially you mothers out there, whether you have a father in your household or not, we have committed every first Wednesday to focus on young black men. And
That's
so
next week.
next week is the first Wednesday of the next month. So we'll be focusing on the young man and one specific aspect of his life. Jimmy, what else do we need to make sure that we address that are in the comments here? Because we have a couple of good things. I don't want to talk too much
Um,
about the church because we've already had that conversation. Go back and look at that show. It was a good one.
Yeah, so we talked about the sentencing guidelines and how we collectively we voted for the guy who's been the architect of those sentencing guidelines. So it's hard for us to gain respect when people look at this and say, "Well, why would you vote against your self-interest?" So it's hard to explain. But that young man, is hitting it on the head. But the other thing, Tom, is that we are going to, like I said, we're focusing every Wednesday, first Wednesday, every first show of the month to talking to young men. So all the mothers out there who have sons, all the fathers out there who have sons, all the young men out there, come back next week, invite your friends, and we're going to have a no bars hold conversation, real talk. There's no PC here. We're not holding anything back. You can ask questions, and we will give you the benefit of our wisdom, but we're also going to challenge you to lift the banner and raise up the flag and go forward because we need the next generation of black men because Tom and I at some point are going to be gone. And the
Yeah.
men that we look up to, some of the people that we've had on this show, like Charles O'Neill and a few other, they're going to be gone. And so it's going to be the next generation behind us, the sons and the grandsons, are going to be the ones who are going to be coming up, and we're going to need. I hate to go to my grave, Tom, thinking that we passed the torch and the torch went out because no one was paying attention.
Well, the good news, Jimmy, is there are some a lot of young black men out there who have their heads on straight, Jimmy. But I think it is a daily struggle because of the insidious attack on the psychology of the young black men, of the black
Yes.
men in general, primarily through mass media. A lot of it through our popular music, Jimmy, that destroys the brains of our young black men. We have a lot of sharp young brothers out there, but unfortunately, they put themselves in harm's way because of them being
Yes.
influenced by folks out there who, to your point earlier in this show, sell out our young black men, sell out our young black women so they can put some money in the back of their pocket. And we are worse off for it. Maybe, Jimmy, next week we should talk about young black men and their money.
We will, Tom, and maybe hopefully we need to always talk about wealth creation,
Or
Tom.
wealth.
That
Yeah.
has to be
Young
the
black.
center of our thinking for the next generation of black kids coming up. We got to be talking wealth to them every day to brainwash them into understanding that they have to create wealth. We can't just continue to be consumers in this country. And the other thing,
And
Tom, is that next week, like I said, when we have that show, please come ask questions. We have the line. You can chat questions or you can call in and participate in the conversation if you have questions. But we're going to challenge you to step your game up. This is the time. I don't care where you are in life. You can always turn things around, Tom. And the last point, Tom, this may be the only medium in America that has anything positive to say, encouraging to say to young black men. I mean, we don't
come
write
on,
you
Jimmy.
off.
I
I
know.
can't think of one,
There have to
Tom.
be some.
I mean, the Cosby Show is gone now, man. There are no more
Yeah, this is
Cosby's
true.
and positive
Yeah,
messages out there for our young black kids, man. So,
well, this is one hopefully among Jimmy. I don't have time to watch all the podcasts, so hopefully we are one among many, Jimmy. But we are committed to strengthening, empowering, and enlightening young Black men, because we do have to pass the torch to
Yes,
somebody. On top of that, we have to have young Black men out there, strong young Black men, to take care of our young Black women, and quite frankly, to be examples. Because I
that is
think when
correct.
when Black men take their rightful place, our sisters are standing there right behind them, as they always have been. But
And Tom,
it's just
when the black woman is safe and secure, when you protect her, she is the greatest entity, force that you will ever have in your life. But when she's insecure, she could be the worst force in your life. And for all those
mhm.
complaints out there, about the black woman, is because you have not provided the security and the safety that she needs to bring out the great God features that God's in put in her to come out. So we have a great deal to do, Tom, to protect our women and make them the best they could possibly be.
And Jimmy, there was something that you said a long time ago, Jimmy, that comes to bear. And I know
Hmm.
that there may have been some caveats or some exceptions in this, Jimmy, but there was something that you said a long time ago, that when a woman knows that you are willing to literally give up your life and
Yes,
die for her, then when we talk about this subject of protecting the Black woman,
that's where you have to
respecting,
be,
and,
Tom.
and, and let me be very clear, Jimmy, when the other person on the other side, whether it's a law enforcement officer, whether it's someone with a noose, whether it's someone who is trying to inflict psychological damage on your woman, your girl child, and they know that you are not afraid to
Thank you.
literally take his life,
Preach, brother.
or give up your life in order to protect her, Jimmy, then you know what? Our answers have been raised. And so
Ditto.
at the end of the day, Jimmy, at the end of the day, if there's nothing else that we have said today, Jimmy, brothers who are out there, your heads are on straight. You're willing to do what you want to do. It doesn't matter what your lot is on life. It has nothing to do with the amount of economics.
Correct.
It doesn't have to do with the amount of money you have in your pocket right now. But when your woman, when your mothers, when your aunties, when your wife, when your girlfriend, when your beautiful little girl knows that you are willing to put your life on the line at a dime's drop to protect her, Jimmy,
It's a game
our
changer,
problems are
Tom.
solved.
Yes, that's a game
And so why
changer,
don't
Tom.
we? And so we will close on that. To our sisters out there, we love you. We
Yes, we do.
appreciate you. We apologize for things that may have happened to hurt you, but understand that there are some men out there who are willing to put their life on the line for you today. And quite frankly, if he isn't there, find somebody who's willing to do that,
Thank
because
you.
we're
Don't
out
waste
there.
your time. That's right. If he's
We're out
not
there.
there, we're out. So, Tom, close us out with the prayer, man, before we go to our closing theme music.
All right, dear Lord and gracious Father, we come before you again, thanking you for bringing us back together. Father, we thank you for all the blessings that you have bestowed upon us. We thank you for keeping us together. We thank you for blessing our families. We thank you for keeping us healthy, Father. For those of us who have lost our loved ones, Father, we ask that you would help comfort us and help us to understand that the spirit of their legacy is still with us. So help us to embrace what their lives meant for us, for our families, for our children, and our children's children. Father, continue to lift us up that we may have an inspired word that may change behavior, that may do something that is within your will for whomever is listening to us now, whoever is listening to us in the future. Keep our minds focused on what it is that you would have us to do and the difference that you would have us to make, Father, so that your will might be done on earth as it is in heaven. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Tom, we're actually closing the show out right on time, Tom.
All right. All right. And it won't be any problem finding some SMEs when it comes to wealth creation. I mean, some guys, whether they be financial planners or folks who are in the money world. I know you have a lot of experience here as well, in this. Okay, good deal. We'll get a couple of guys on for next week, and we're going to talk about young black men and creating wealth.